Hello everyone, welcome to the South Niagara Chambers of Commerce Learning Series. My name is Kevin Jacobi. I'm part of the Welland-Pelham Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Niagara Falls Chambers of Commerce, and sit on the board of directors. Today we're going to be talking about free trade zones, understanding what they are, how you could use them for your businesses, and comparing what we do here in Canada to two other countries, two of our bigger trading partners, China and the United States. So what we'll be covering today? Well, we're going to do an overview of Niagara's foreign trade zone, our designation here in Niagara, the free trade zone programs available in Canada, so what makes up a free trade zone program, an overview of the United States free trade zones, as well as that of China, and most importantly, how our businesses can benefit from using these programs. So, Canada's foreign trade zones. So what is a foreign trade zone? Is it the same thing as a free trade zone? Well, kinda. Canada itself considers itself as a country a free trade zone. We have programs that have been around since the 60s and 70s. And what the government started to establish were these foreign trade zones. And what they're there to do is to promote and help communities accelerate that have become centers of excellence for these programs. The first foreign trade zone was established back in 2009 in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It was chosen because of its clustering of industry, as well as its import-export opportunities for agriculture and natural products coming to and from the prairie provinces. So they just developed this foreign trade zone to better promote and to get a better understanding of what programs are available to help companies do a little better when it comes on the international market for trading. Our trade zone here in Niagara was established back in April of 2016, so we're relatively new. We're not the newest anymore, though. Windsor-Essex holds that title, as they were designated last year. So how did these different places get chosen? Well, considerations to become a foreign trade zone by the federal government are basically having an economic priority for the region. So that's identified by our local and provincial governments. We have to show leadership, both in the private and public sector, towards export development. A dedicated governance body, so that is having a group of individuals from both the public and private sector to be able to oversee and regulate the facilitation of information about free trade zones. Having secured local and provincial government support to participate in the task force, so we have to have a buy-in from all our levels of government. A favorable business environment, you have to have a clustering of industry that actually can take advantage of the programs. You have to have infrastructure, so you have to have a way of getting goods in and out of the designated areas so that you have a better opportunity for it to grow and flourish. And of course, you also need to have access to a high-skilled labor force, as well as a transportation system that allows people to get to and from the different companies. So the programs that are offered in Canada, there are basically 5 of them. We have a duties relief program, which is an upfront relief of duties. And what that basically means is when goods come into Canada, there's 2 different ways that you might have to pay additional costs besides the cost of the goods you bought from the vendor where you purchased it. One would be obviously our taxes. So whether it's designated for HST or GST or a mixture of both, depending on where it's coming from and where you are in the country. Also, there could be tariffs. We do have free trade programs between countries. You might have known about the idea of CETA that was just signed this past September, or NAFTA that's been around since the 90s. All of these help make certain goods exempt from having additional costs when you bring them into the country. Not all countries have that, so what this program allows you to do is to basically defer those duties. There's also a drawback program as well. So if you're bringing goods into Canada with the idea of doing some value-added work possibly to it, and then exporting it again to another country or region, you might be able to then reclaim the taxes and tariffs that you already have paid on those goods. Custom bonded warehousing. Now this is the big one for a lot of companies. And what custom bonded warehousing is allows you to bring in goods, basically kind of a suspension or in limbo. And what that means is that you bring it in a controlled manner where you can keep it in a bonded space that allows you to defer the taxes and or tariffs until you have that product leave that space. So it doesn't officially land in Canada. It stays in that space for up to 4 years, and at that time you either then can ship it out to a vendor that's within Canada, you can have it move along its way to another country, or you can return it to the country of origin or destroy it. What this allows you to do is basically have a better cash flow strategy for your company, in the fact that you can defer those taxes and tariffs or duties until it's close to the time of invoicing. So if you're bringing in things that are very expensive, or you're bringing things that it's cheaper to send a full container to your location rather than individual pallets, you can bring it in all at once, but you don't pay for those additional costs until it's closer to the time of invoicing your customer. There's also Export Distribution Center Program, which is upfront relief of GST, HST on certain imports and domestic purchases. Basically, that's when you're adding limited value to it, but it doesn't really designate it for a Canadian market. It's for you doing work for it to go onto a third market. An example would that be is bringing something in from Europe, maybe doing repackaging for it or relabeling, and then shipping it to the United States. That's when this type of program would kick in. And then there's Exporters of Processing Services Program, which again is similar to the Distribution Center Program and basically allows you to do some processing before exporting out to another market. Now, the United States, of course, that's our closest trading partner. And countries, communities along the border between Canada and the US have a great opportunity for doing a lot of import-export opportunities. The United States have free trade zone programs. So unlike Canada, where our trade zones are based around companies programming, free trade zones in the United States are geographically specific. Now what that means is that they are designated areas or zones within the United States that have been designated as a free trade area, kind of like our bonded space. But they are close to entries into the United States or pathways of goods coming in and out of the country. They started their program a lot earlier than we did. They started back in 1934. Basically, the way it works for them is these zones itself allows them, again, to defer or to eliminate taxes and duties on goods coming into their country until it leaves these spaces. So where a free trade zone or a custom bonded area in Canada, where that allows us to have a portion of our company be designated for bonded, these are actually the entire locations that are considered bonded space in the US. Now, something that's a little different in their space than what we can do here in Canada is that they can do a lot more processing or value-added processes within the bonded space of these free trade zones. And one of the biggest things and advantages you can use in the US is something called inverted tariffs. Now, inverted tariff is about the idea of how much money you pay for tariffs of goods coming into the country. So each item you have has a different tariff code. And that tariff code basically tells the government what item it is, possibly how big it is or what the quantity of it is. And each of those has a certain tax rate to them. So for tariffs, a good could have a tax rate of 10%, whereas another good could be something 30 or 40%. Now in the US, they have tariffs as well. Their tariff codes are similar to Canada, but not quite the same. So if you are working between these two countries, you need to understand that and make sure you bring into your team someone like from a bonded warehouse or from a border services agency, such as a broker, that will give you the opportunity to know the difference between our tariff codes and those of the US. Now, in the free trade zone spaces in the US, they can put together and process items. So you might bring in two different items coming into the country at two different tariff rates. But during your process, you combine the two to make a different product altogether. This product may have a less tariff rate when it leaves that bonded space than it did as those two individual parts. Let me give you a better example. So, dashboards for automobiles. Obviously, we have a big industry where we have a lot of parts moving in and out from different countries to make our cars. A dashboard has a certain tariff rate. Now, the car stereo that goes into that dashboard has a different tariff rate. So when you're working in the US, that tariff rate for the car stereo is much higher than the dashboard. So by bringing it into their free trade zones, they can avoid paying those tariffs because it hasn't landed in the US yet. Combine it with that dashboard to make a different tariff code, which is now a dashboard with a radio. That tariff code is much less than the individual parts, so they can have a savings on when it enters into that market and have an advantage on their competition. The deferral programs for the US is similar to what we have in Canada. So as you might remember, I just said that for our bonded warehousing space, we have up to 4 years to use that product and have it move along to its final destination. In the US, it's quite similar. It's 5 years. And again, at the end of that term, they have to pay appropriate duties and tariffs. Now, one of our other big trading partners is the China Free Trade Zone. In China, they have decided that they want to open up their market because they have a larger middle-class developing companies, many of them still state-owned or sponsored, but are trying to develop their export opportunities. So back in 2013, the Chinese government decided to do some test subjects of where they developed these foreign trade zone areas. These areas are different than Canada and even the US in that they're much larger, almost some of them the size of the region of Niagara, where they have businesses within those spaces allowed to conduct business as if it was not part of mainland China. So goods come into those areas, they can be processed, manufactured, manipulated in many different ways, and then actually travel back either into the Chinese market or out to other countries. All of this is being done at a lower tax rate than what the mainland China has, as well as avoiding any tariffs and duties depending on where it's going to land. The Chinese market developed this for it to be able to be more competitive as their neighboring countries started to gain more traction when it comes to industry and development in that area. Many people did not want to pay the taxes from the Chinese government, then have it being exported out. It was adding a lot of cost to the goods being sold. So by developing this strategy, they opened up their market and the opportunity for their local companies to establish themselves in these spaces and allow them a little more freedom when it came to doing business with other countries. Another strange or different part to theirs is it's not all about business when it comes to the foreign trade zones for China. These are small communities or little cities that are developed in these spaces. So not only is there industry and storage in there, we also have residential, you have restaurants, you have everything you need to be part of that community because access to these spaces is restricted, so many people don't want to necessarily move in and out through those spaces. Also, people that aren't Chinese residents living in that space are allowed a little more freedom than you would in mainland China. I've been there a number of times, and one of the strange things to get accustomed to is there's certain programs I can't use while I'm in mainland China. I can't use Facebook, I can't use Google, and many of my other search engines are just not available to me because of their restrictions to the World Wide Web. Now, in a free trade zone, they work so that these programs actually do work in these spaces. They're considered, these zones are considered more of a free area where international companies have a better opportunity to use them and to be more connected back to their original countries. The other aspect for it as well as these foreign trade zones in China allow people to use other currencies and have a freer flowing movement of money back and forth between these areas. A great portion for the Chinese community here for these foreign trades is also e-commerce. Now, with traveling goods individually, so when we have platforms like our Amazon or eBay or whatever the case may be, when goods are moved to another, oh, we have a viewer question already. Oh, what question is that?
Do you need a customs broker to access free trade zones?
Oh, all right, that's a great question. So the question was, do you need a customs broker to access free trade zones? So the answer is yes and no. A customs broker's job is to help facilitate the paperwork needed to move your goods quickly and efficiently across borders. So this paperwork can be done by individuals. However, if this is not your expertise or you feel more comfortable having someone that has a professional service to do that, they can be a valuable member to your team. When you're setting up a bondage space, for example, in Canada, you don't need to have a broker for that because everything goes to the closest border service facility. You're more than capable of doing the paperwork yourself. However, if you are dealing with multiple countries or dealing with transportation as well as the storage of these goods, it might be great to add one of these professionals to your team. So hopefully that answers the question for you. So we were talking about e-commerce. So in China, the way the bondage space is an advantage to you is it's much cheaper sending a large amount of stuff somewhere than it is to send it individual packages. It's called LTL, or less than truckload, less than container loads. One pallet of goods can cost you as much as an entire container filled of goods would be to the same designation. That's the same whether going to China, going to the US, or going even across Canada. So e-commerce set up in the foreign trade zones in China allow you to bring goods in bulk, store it without paying taxes and duties. And when you get orders through e-commerce to the growing middle-class market in China, you can then ship it out and the individual will pay the VAT, the value-added tax, to the government as it leaves that designation. So you don't necessarily see that impact on your bottom line and reduce your margin or have to raise your prices higher. Many consumers are accustomed to that. Similarly with Canada or the US, bringing especially higher valued goods, bringing those in and having them come in bulk and then ship them out sporadically as you need them over the period of 4 years in Canada or 5 years in the US will save you money in that respect as well. So one of the other sections for the free trade zones in China, and is a great marketing tool to get to that market, is an app called WeChat. Now WeChat is kind of like our Facebook, our Skype, Messenger, all at sort of pushed together. We have access to that here in North America. It's quite popular with the Asian community, and it's getting more popular and more traction with especially university students across Canada. And what this app allows you to do is to connect with friends via the internet, but also for businesses to promote and to help them expand their business range by showing off their product or their advertising for events or activities that they have. Now, non-Chinese residents don't have access to the aspect of the commercial side of WeChat. We can sign up and see the ads, but we can't place them ourselves. If you are part of a foreign trade zone in China, you can actually apply and have a commercial license for your WeChat, where then you have the same advantages that Chinese companies have over there. WeChat now on their phones has replaced many things. It replaces their wallets. They actually use it now like we use Apple Pay here or our tap cards. They can do that with their phone. They can literally leave the house and have everything they need in one application. This is a powerful tool. We're seeing similar tools showing up now in North America. We're seeing tools like this that have been established in Europe. It seems to be the way that things are going in the future is being able to leverage this marketing opportunity to be able to better reach the consumers. So if you are someone that does do e-commerce, has a website, this is something that would be an advantage for you. So I guess, oh, we have another viewer question.
How would the removal of NAFTA affect foreign trade zones?
Okay, so the question is, how would the removal of NAFTA affect foreign trade zones? That's a good question. So NAFTA is North America Free Trade Act, so it's between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And as we know, they're in negotiations right now. It's been around since the 1990s, so I believe it was the Mulroney era that established it. And what it basically allowed was almost all of our goods can travel freely between the three countries without having an additional taxes or tariffs placed on them. So you just place your appropriate taxes for the country you're in. So for example, if we're bringing something in from the US, we don't pay any sort of duties on that, but we will pay the entry fee for the HST or the GST, whatever is appropriate. Right now, the government of the United States has opened up negotiations for NAFTA where they are looking, or at least they're saying they're looking at the idea of possibly removing it. What this would mean is we go back to either a new set of trade acts, which would put different duties and tariffs on different goods, or if we don't have those, it would go back to World Trade Organization standards. So if NAFTA was eliminated, it would cause a bit of an upset on how we do business crossing the border. I know that provincially, our government has been working with the governors around the Great Lakes specifically to make sure that if something like this did happen, that we have an alternate agreement in place. Because it's not only important to Canada, it's also important to the U.S. because they use a lot of our goods or rely on Canada to be one of their main markets for them to export out as well. So a free trade zone would not be affected by that because, again, free trade zone means you're going to be deferring taxes and duties until you use it. The only thing it would affect is how much taxes and duties you pay when it leaves those areas. So hopefully that answers your question there on that. So basically, one of the questions we have to ask is we all have different businesses, we have different services that are going on. How can we benefit from working with an FTZ program? Well, first thing and all you have to do is determine what you're trying to do. So are you trying to expand your exports? Are you trying to work as a distributor? So you're looking for products from around the world and trying to find markets for it here locally? Are you looking to become part of a supply chain for China? So are you looking at the idea of collecting goods in Canada and shipping it to China for their consumption? Or are you looking to take advantage of other programs here to benefit your existing company? So all these things are very specific to what you're trying to do. That's when you have to bring your team together. So we talked about the idea of a broker who may be part of your team. It's definitely a good idea to talk to them about the idea of tariff codes and what costs it might have to you. Other people you want to bring onto your team is your accountant. You want to find out from them is, all right, this is a cash flow question. So if I was to bring in goods and store it in a bonded space, there's a cost of storage, of course. There's also a cost of buying those products in bulk, bringing it over here. The question for your accountant would be is, all right, well, how much am I saving or how much can I improve my cash flow by having these goods stay in bond without paying those taxes and duties? Once you figure out that information, you'll now know whether there's an advantage for you to use these programs and put them in place. So there's a bunch of homework you have to do. So you need to speak to your government offices. Now, we're in a foreign trade zone. So a foreign trade zone, like we talked about, is a clustering of services designated to promote and encourage the use of these foreign trade zone programs. So in the Niagara region, we have a number to call at the regional headquarters that is designated for doing foreign trade zones. They don't do the work, but they are the concierge service that allows you to gain access to the individuals that oversee these programs. So in Canada, that would be Canada Border Services, as well as Revenue Canada, who deals with the HST, GST situation. If you contact them, they would be able to facilitate and help you move towards the right offices necessary. The other thing you might want to do is attend trade shows or seminars that are focusing on areas of interest. So if you go to a certain area on vacation that you find a good that you like and think this would be great back home, well, see if there's other people doing that in the market. How are they doing it? How are they approaching it? It may be that there's a saturation. It may be something new, but you can always learn from what's been going on around you. That's the whole thing too about with Chambers of Commerce, why we do these seminars, is connect with companies that already understand or are doing this type of business. There are a number of companies in the chambers that already import or export to different countries. Going to these networking events that the chamber offers each month, you get an opportunity to speak to different people and possibly find out or gain those valuable networking connections that allow you then to figure out what your niche could be in those markets. The other thing to always be considerate of is try to establish yourself in the markets that you're trying to go either for import or export. Have a contact there, have a liaison, at least visit the area so you understand what the processes are there as well, what's expected of you as an importer or exporter, and what type of security measures you may have to take in order to ensure that your goods are safe, secure, and meet the regulations of the local governments. And one thing you also have to do is make sure you understand your product and country of origin particulars. So country of origin is the idea of where was the product either made, assembled, or manufactured. The country of origin designates the tariff codes because different tariff codes for the same product are different depending on the country of origin. Through the news these past few weeks, we understand now that there are new tariff code and regulations for aluminum and steel. The NAFTA partners, Canada and Mexico, are currently exempt, but other regions such as the European Union and Asia have as much as 25% new tariffs put onto these products. Now, if this was a product of Canada, it would have 0. If it was a product of England, for example, may have 25%. So making sure that the country of origin is correct for these products is very important for how much you're going to be paying. And you have to make sure you're considerate of those ideas for that. When you're doing your paperwork, especially if you're doing it in-house, you have to make sure that you know everything you are shipping out on your behalf. If you're bringing in and you manufacture pencils, for example, well, maybe that graphite was made in Canada, but the wood is coming in from the US. You have to figure out how much work is being done and what percentage of the product is from each country in order to figure out where the country of origin is. And again, that country of origin will designate whether it has a tariff, whether or how much tariff that would be. So what I was trying to do for this seminar is give you an idea, a little bit of understanding of what foreign trade zone programs are and how there are different ones around the world. There's many more than besides the 3 we spoke about. The question is figuring out what is your market, what is the product you're trying to sell, and where can you either export it to or find the resources to make the product around the world. That's very individual. Everyone's going to have a different level of expertise, and they're going to have a different big strategy for their company on how they're going to be doing this. So your next step, of course, would be is to figure this out as how it's going to relate to yourself. If you have concerns, my company is Canada BW Warehousing. We are a logistics company here in Niagara. We do bonded warehousing as well as we do import-export market research and innovation. I'm sure there's many companies like ours in Canada and the US and even in China. So I would reach out to someone if you don't feel comfortable yourself to find out how you can move forward in getting yourself a little more acclimated to import-export opportunities. So unless there are any other questions, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in for the seminar. Hope it was helpful. And if there's any questions after this, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.